Welcome back to Latin. This is lesson 23, chapter 23 in Wheelock. Today we're learning participles. Participles are a big part of the Latin language. It's a form of the verb that we've yet to learn, and it's actually a verbal adjective. That is, it's an adjective, a word that describes a noun, like blue is an adjective, or tall is an adjective, just a word that describes another noun, but they're adjectives made out of verbs. So you don't, you want to be able to say things like the tall man. Okay, there's an adjective, tall, modifying a noun, man. But you also want to be able to say the running man, the man who was running. And so we have these also in English. Our participles tend to end in ing, our present participles, and our past participles end in ed, the learned man, the man who had learned. And so, like a verb, participles have tense and voice. Like an adjective, they have case, number, and gender. And so let's look at how they are formed. There are 4 participles in Latin. There's a present active participle, there's a perfect passive participle, and there's a future active and a future passive participle. So that's the thing to note. In the present tense, there's only an active participle. In the perfect tense, there's only a passive participle, and the future has both. Here's how they are created. The present participle is formed off the present stem, so that's your first principal part. So just the normal word, the first word listed in the vocabulary when you learn a verb. So laudo. So the present active participle of laudo would just be to take your stem, loud, and then add your ens, loudons. Loudons, because you're adding the stem. You'll recall is you take the present infinitive, knock off the re, there's your stem, so loudons would be there. And that means praising. Okay. No passive present, no active perfect. So next we go to we want the participle stem for the perfect passive. How do we find that? Well, the participle, the fourth principal part, is the perfect passive participle. So our principal parts for laudo, laudare, laudavi, laudatum. There's my participle. So the stem is that laudat, and then to make it masculine, I would use us. Make it feminine, laudata. To make it neuter, laudatum. And so this is, we'll just leave the one form, laudatus. That's having been praised. Okay. Future active participle, we're going to add urus to our participle stem. So that's going to be laudaturus. Laudaturus. Will or about to praise. Going to praise is another way we say it in English. About to praise. And then the future passive participle, take the present stem again, and then you add laudandus, therefore would be about to be praised, or it has the notion of inevitability, that it's going to be praised, or it should be praised. The gerundive. We'll talk more about the gerundive as time goes on. But the first thing to note are how these are formed. So you need to make, this is all on page 184. Page 184. You need to make a flashcard of this little chart of how the participle is formed. And then it would be good to use examples. And so here I've done the examples again with the verb ago. So and then also on the top of page 185, it has all the rest of the examples. So you really need to spend some time this week learning how to form them. And that's going to be a major thing on the quiz and just something you have to get in your head to move forward in Latin, to recognize this as a present active participle. It's a perfect passive participle, future active participle, and future passive participle. So that's how all those things are built. Then, now most of these are very easy as far as the rest of the forms. So the nominative singular masculine form of the perfect passive participle is actus. And then what's the genitive? Well, the genitive, of course, would be acti. The dative, acto. The accusative actum, the ablative singular octo. Likewise, when we're dealing with the feminine perfect passive participle, acta, the genitive, octi, dative, octi, I, right? So those are easy, and most of the participles are declined that way. The future active and passive are also that way, and the perfect passive, just nice normal first, second declension endings. The present participle has third declension endings. Again, they're not surprising at all. They're just a third declension, as you might expect. So it's agens, and then the stem has a hidden T, so that comes out in all the other forms. And then the endings are just is, em, ace, eum, ibis, ace, ibis. These forms in parentheses are the neuter. So the neuter endings are just different in three forms. Remember, all neuters, the nominative and accusative, are the same. So if that's the nominative for neuter, it has to be the same in the accusative. And then it has this characteristic nominative plural ending in the nominative and accusative. And so if we're going to translate these, this would be agens, so this would be doing, right? The doing, the man who is doing the thing, the acting man. Or woman, because the masculine feminine form is the same. How do we translate the genitive form of the acting man or woman? So they're just adjectives. They're just going to describe nouns. Okay, and we'll get some examples here down below. So here's our first example. And now I've gone to page. And again, I encourage you to read through the explanation that Wheelock leaves you here in pages 184 to 186. Feel free to read it on your own. In this lesson, I'm boiling it down for you to kind of make clear to you what he's saying. So here he gives us the example of let's kind of split these out. Let's first just do the first one. Graiki nautai videntis polyphemus. That's the Cyclops in the story of Odysseus. So let's take a look at this sentence. The Greek sailors, that's our nominative. Our verb is tement, are afraid, are terrified. And here is my nominative plural, masculine, present active participle. So you can parse a participle. It's present and it's active. And then you can also, identify it the way you do an adjective. And it's also nominative, masculine, plural. So we've got the Greek sailors are afraid. And now we've got a participial phrase here. It's nominative, so it goes with Greiki, with the Greek sailors. Nominative, masculine plural. The Greek sailors, seeing Polyphemus, are afraid. And then he's saying, well, you could change the verb to the past tense. There's now my main verb is perfect tense. Have been afraid, right? Were afraid. The Greek sailors, now it's were afraid. Now what he wants you to learn is that the time signature, the tense of the participle is dependent upon, is relative to the main verb. So so this is a present participle. It's present with the main verb. So here we'd say when they were seeing, or the Greek sailors when they saw. So a lot of times in English we're going to take participles and we're going to change them into phrases with words like when or because, kind of based on the context. Or this might be since they saw Polyphemus were afraid. And then you could change this to a future participle, right? We could have Wizuri. The Greek sailors about to see Polyphemus were afraid. The Greek sailors, when they were about to see Polyphemus, were afraid. So a future participle can be like when they were about to do whatever the verb says. Okay. So I don't want to make participles too complicated. I'm going to kind of leave, so the simplified version of it is they're just adjectives. They're just adjectives made out of verbs. And you're going to get a feel for how they're to be translated. Like I said, very often with you're going to turn them into little phrases. And Wheelock talks about that on the bottom of page 186 and at the top of page 187. And let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the examples on page 187. Those are pretty good. So the first one, mater filium amans auxilium dat. So the mother gives aid, loving the son. Okay, so the mother, how are you going to translate that? Well, probably the mother, because she loves her son, gives help. Right, so literally it's the mother loving the son. Here's the present active participle. The mother loving the son gives help. Well, to smooth that out in English, you're going to say something like, since the mother loves the son, she gives him help. Okay, another one. Pater filiam visurus casam probat. The father, being about to see the daughter, so it's a future active participle, being about to see. The father, being about to see the daughter, prepared the house. So we'd say, again, to smooth it out, the father, since he was about to see his daughter, was preparing the house. Preparing the house for a guest. Okay. And puella in casam veniens gaudebat. The girl coming into the house, coming home, rejoiced. So again, you can smooth it out. When the girl was coming home, she rejoiced. When the girl came home, she rejoiced. Okay. So we'll get a feel for those. So you need to make flashcards of the declension of the present active participle. And you need to remember this chart of which tenses and voices have participles. And then, of course, the first chart of how they're all made. How do you make the present participle? How do you make the perfect participle? How do you make the future active and future passive participles? And then you also have, of course, all your vocabulary to make. And the vocabulary is very straightforward. Remember, when you get to, now you can see why it's so important to know your principal parts of each one of the verbs. So when you learn your verbs on page 188, when you make those flashcards, don't forget to list those out. And so again, the way our schedule works, Monday and Tuesday, watch this video. Make your flashcards, study your flashcards, learn the vocabulary, learn these forms. And then for your translations on Wednesday and Thursday that you need to be working on, I want you to do from the Exercitaciones, numbers 1, 5, and 10. 1, 5, and 10 here. So work on those, and then Thursday you should be ready to watch the next video, which will cover the answers to these translations. So a pretty big chapter today. A normal amount of vocabulary, but some new forms to learn, and I encourage you to read through Wheelock's explanation, give you a little more detail on how the participles work. And then on Thursday, you should be ready to watch your translation corrections. On Friday, you should be ready for a quiz.